The straight arm plank is good for mountain bikers because it adds a little bit more pressure on the shoulders for shoulder endurance for those downhill sections, and of course, bracing of the core. But to add even more benefit, try tying a kettlebell to a band, and this not only engages the lats, adds more pressure on the other side, shoulder and tricep, but the opposing oblique, which is exactly what we need to resist rotation on the bike, get better handling and more endurance through the core to link upper and lower for long days riding. Peace. How much protein should I be consuming every day? And this is such a valid question because if you Google it, there's so much contradictory information out there, all the way from 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, all the way up to 2.2 grams. And that's not even to mention the availability of those proteins within the foods. When we're talking about amino acid profiles of foods like eggs being super high and soy being a little lower, then how can we categorize how many grams of that protein when those grams aren't equal? There's also information out there to suggest how much protein you can metabolize per hour. I see nutrition and diet more like religion than science, and it comes down to your personal core beliefs and what fits your lifestyle. I probably eat more protein than needed because I'd rather be in an excess of protein than a deficit, so that I know that my muscles are getting exactly what I want from the training that I do. And will that put excess pressure on my kidneys? Well, having a balanced diet otherwise with whole foods and lots of vegetables, then very unlikely that my kidneys are going to be under more stress than somebody that doesn't have a very healthy lifestyle. So personally, what do I eat? Well, I love protein-based meals. So I tend to have at least 20 grams per meal and about 5 meals per day, spaced equally throughout the day. And actually that's the way that I like to live my life. You make up your mind how you want to eat it, how often, and it probably still fits into a scientific study. The movement I'm about to show you is for expert training only. We've done the Tyson push-up, which is a beginner version of what I'm about to show you. But to get extra speed, power, strength, and everything that you need to be an expert mountain biker, blast yourself up, touch at the back, and see how much benefit that gives you taking massive compressions and just being a gnarly rider. Peace. Question is, why is my lower back hurting? Well, presumably you're a mountain biker and you spend a lot of time in this flexion of the spine position because it's very difficult to have a neutral spine whilst riding, particularly for a long time. So then that's adding fatigue in your lower back. But to highlight that, it's hip flexor tension generally and weak glutes and instability through the core. So try these 5 tips to relieve lower back pain. The first position, the couch stretch, specifically for the hip flexor. This gets tight when you ride and sit for long periods of time. So by loosening this, we're going to get a better hip and lower back position. So bring your heel to your butt, clench your butt, pull your hip forwards, and spend 2 minutes each side every single day. On to the next. The 90-90 stretch is fantastic because we hit external and internal rotation of the hip. So wherever there's tightness, we're going to work that out. So we want better functioning hips. So instead of just static stretches, we're going to do a 90-90 rotation. Do this for 45 seconds, 3 times every day. Then on to the next. Now the hips are more flexible. We want to strengthen the glutes. And by doing a glute bridge, clenching in an isometric fashion, we can build some strength without weight. Ideally, you'd have access to weight or a gym, but by doing these, we can do it at least once a day, and to add extra load, do it on one leg. Try 15 to 20 reps each side with a couple of minutes rest between 3 sets. That'll build the glutes, help balance out. On to the next. You need to build your core to connect your lower and upper body and stabilize. So spend 15 seconds in a straight plank, but also building in the side plank position, 10 to 15 seconds, and then rotate between them to really condition you to the longer downhill sections or even uphill where you need to stabilize your core for a prolonged amount of time. Don't do crunches, do isometrics, and don't neglect those obliques. On to the next. And the final one is down dog position to up dog. We're going to stretch out the lower back in this position, which we absolutely need to do if you're getting pain, but also through the hamstrings here. And if you want to add another challenge in between each, you can add a dive bomber push-up to add some mobility and strength through the shoulder, which is always going to help you mountain biking. Do this for 5 minutes daily, alternating, and that will help. And that was the final tip, but we've got one more thing for you. You've obviously watched this video because you want to get stronger and fitter for mountain biking. Sign up to Fit for Racing today. There's 7 days on the app for free, so you can try it, see what we're all about, and then start working towards being a better mountain biker. Peace. The question was, what was the most effective type of squat for mountain bikers? We're going to show you 4 different types of squats, starting with the low bar back squat. The least effective for mountain bikers. This is for powerlifting, and the movement is restricted. So Jamie's going to do a squat, but as you can see, just breaking parallel with shins almost vertical, it turns it into more of a hingy squat. And I know hinging's good for mountain biking, but leave hinging for pulls off the ground. The next one is a high bar back squat. Similar, but more in the Olympic lifting style where the torso stays vertical and you squat between your hips, engaging the quads way more. But even better still is the front squat where the bar sits on your shoulder and squatting again between the hips. Because of the weight distribution of the bar versus your body, it tries to pull you, meaning that you need more engagement of the core, but also accounts for tighter ankles so that you can get better range and better depth. And the 4th squat, the goblet squat, for those that don't have a barbell. Any kind of weight is going to help your strength gains, but not necessarily the maximum weight like a power lifter. So go for the front squat if you can, or anything at all to load, get stronger, get better at riding. One of my all-time favorite movements for mountain biking fitness and strength is the barbell thruster, which is a combination of a front squat in this rack position and a push press, which we showed you in a separate video. Try this workout, set a timer, do 100 thrusters, but every minute, on the minute, you have to do, on minute 1, 1 overbar burpee, minute 2, 2 overbar burpees, so the burpees increase as your time decreases to get 100 thrusters in. Comment below. If you finish it, you're an absolute legend. We had a question, what would be your best 3 dumbbell mountain bike exercises? Try these for a muscular endurance and conditioning style workout. The Man Maker, probably one of the best anyway for strengthening the upper body and control. Next, we have the thruster, which utilizes the squat and press, both really important for mountain biking, but the squat being quite vertical torso means hits the quads really well. And then to even that out, we're going to do a snatch. In the snatch, we're going to work the hinge, one-armed, alternating, so we get power, endurance, and all of the goodness through the posterior chain to make you a better rider. Training core for mountain biking is pretty much essential, but sticking to that front and back sagittal plane is very restrictive, and very rarely do we only go forwards and back on the bike. Instead, add some rotation in these 3 progressively more difficult core movements. This one a crunch with a twist, the next being feet off the ground into a cycle where you're holding tension throughout. Go, 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 go. And finally, alternating V-up. So your left foot to right hand and alternating. This way you'll get lots of good oblique engagement, way better than just sitting doing crunches. If you're a mountain biker, you should really consider working your core, but not just in the sagittal front and back plane. What we want really is oblique engagement, because this is what's at play mostly when you're handling your bike. So this variation of a landmine with a band, I've got 20 kilos on there. By bouncing it actively, we're bracing the opposing side on the obliques, which is really going to help stabilize on the bike. 35 to 45 seconds each side with a minute off 3 times, and you're on to a winner. A big misconception by riders is that if you strengthen your hip flexor, then it becomes more tight. In some instances that's true. However, we're looking for mobility in the hip flexor, which is usable strength at end range. So by doing this variation of a stretch, where we're actually coming back up going to strengthen the hip flexor, mobilize it, working out some of the tension so that when we do lots of riding, that tension doesn't then hit the lower back with the anterior pelvic tilt, which is so common in riders. So strengthen and mobilize, don't just stretch. Peace. We had such a good response from the banded deadlifts that I'm going to show you another variation for speed and power for riders. And that's with a kettlebell swing. The band is around both hips here. I'm taking a side-by-side stance to hit what we call a Russian swing, an eye-level swing. I've added the band to reduce the necessary load in the hands to get the activation through the hips, because ultimately I'm pulling the band away from the rig, bam, and it's on its own without a kettlebell. I'm getting some pump through the posterior chain, glutes and hamstrings. And then by adding the kettlebell, encourages some momentum, speed and power to increase even more so the activation, and then your ability to pedal harder, jump harder, and ultimately be better on the bike. Peace.